one of the first licensees in Buffalo owned a bottle return spot. And so it's
a lot of ways to make money in the world.
There are. It is. Well, yeah, well said. But so those finally we're getting those licenses. Those licenses have finally been awarded. Like I said, we have 14 in Western New York. We've got over 200 of the 300 that will be awarded in the state. But, the issue is because there's state funding involved in it, DASNY, the dormitory authority of the state of New York, has to approve your the location you're going to use for your license, or if you don't want state funding, because state funding is promised to 150 of these 300 applicants to say, hey, you got to go through DASNY, so they will approve your spot, and that approval process is not a short period of time.
Now, what do you mean by state funding? Because a lot of the things that we run into, and I know you and I have talked about this in the past, is there's not really banks that are coming to the table for anyone in the cannabis industry. It's sort of private money, or anyone. So what's the limitations? What does it mean going through the state to get funding?
So the state, the card program, I think in theory is a good program because it's trying to begin to scratch the surface of righting the wrongs of, cannabis enforcement over the years. Yeah. Now that's an incredibly tall task.
Yeah, it's a hefty request.
No amount of state funding or licensing will be able to get anybody on the side of being racially profiled. And I say that as a white kid who grew up in the suburbs of Buffalo. Like I recognize what I did not have to deal with, but the state's trying to solve a lot of issues all at once. What they tried to do, Spencer, to kind of get on the other side of that is they said, look, if you get – the program was originally only 150 licenses. So Buffalo was going to get 11 of those 150. They expanded the program from 150 to 300. So now we have 22 of these initial social equity card licenses. The first 150, you couldn't go out and pick a location. So if I liked a location on Main Street or Elmwood or Hurdle or whatever, poppin' neighborhood, as long as it was zoned the right way, no. I have to go through DASNY. DASNY's going to pick my spot with my input. And then
selective input,
right. And so what's really interesting now is that because only half that population is getting the funding through DASNY, DASNY was basically going to become the landlord and then sublet to the dispensary. What's interesting now is what we're hearing is if you don't need the state funding, you're willing to go either traditional financing or alternative financing that isn't. And the traditional financing, very difficult to come by. There are some local banks that are getting into the space, but it's not like here's $1 million loan for the terms are tough.
Right. Yeah.
The problem is, in addition, what we're learning now is that DASNY has these bubble zones where they're saying, well, hey, you don't need our financing, but we've got this property earmarked for someone who does need our financing, so you can't operate within X feet or X miles or whatever.
So they're really zoning. They're really zoning and making sure they're protecting their zones.
Yeah.
Interesting.
There's a lot of moving pieces.
That's crazy.
And the tough part is, look, the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, MRTA, our state's legalization law was passed March 31st, 2021. That's over 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We've got 12 dispensaries open up in the state, not one in Western New York. There's a bunch within the same 3-block radius in Greenwich Village. There's a couple in Albany and Schenectady. There's one in Binghamton. There's one in Ithaca. Some of them are only temporary locations. They're opening up for a month, and then they have to go to delivery until they find their permanent location.
Wow.
So the frustration is obviously real from the consumer's perspective, but then you got to follow the money. We were talking on Soundcheck. Where's the money? Where's the money coming from?
Yep.
Guess what? There's no money in the market right now. So because there's no money going to the dispensary, there's no money flowing from the dispensary to the product manufacturers and from the product manufacturers to the cultivators. So cultivators are left basically having spent, at least 6 figures on outfitting their grow to change from their hemp operations to get ready for THC, but they can't get paid. And some people are 12 months, 15 months into this, if not more, because there weren't a ton of people making a lot of money in hemp, right? Growing hemp flower.
That's where it started, right? The cultivation started on the hemp side. Right. And if you were in at that point, then you can kind of go to, creating for cannabis, right? Growing for cannabis. Okay.
That was the only cultivators licensed in the state of New York right now were those who were licensed to grow hemp. And you had to prove, and we had some very interesting ways of proving that we're non-traditional. Pictures, right? Pictures in barns with literal timestamps on there. That's how we were able to get it in certain circumstances.
Sure.
Only hemp farmers are growing in the state right now. That next round of licensing, this is what I was talking about before. And again, I'm sorry to take us on such a long
No,
tangent.
please. This is good information.
The people, so if the three of us or the four of us in this room decided to apply for a license and we weren't hemp farmers, we weren't hemp processors, and we didn't fit one of those two categories,
right?
We can't even get in until no sooner than after Labor Day this year. So that's 2.5 years. People have been chomping at the bit. I mean, we've got phone calls. I mean, we've been getting phone calls since April of 2021.
Yeah.
Right. And so, hey, what do I do? Well, I mean, we can give you a checklist and get your application materials and help you secure real estate and help you have that, municipality conversations with your municipality to make sure that they know that you're going to open up a dispensary in their borders. But by the way, we're not going to do it until maybe Jan 1, 24 at the earliest.